Aberfan is a colliery village in South Wales. Just after 9 o'clock in the morning of October 21st, 1966, the side of the hill started to move, and 500,000 tons of rain-soaked mine debris in massive tips up the hill started to slide towards the village. Some material came to a halt, yet much of it slid into Aberfan and smashed into Pantglas, the village junior school, from behind. A few children were pulled out alive during the first hour of the rescue effort. 139 school children and 5 teachers died in this tragedy. While England's National Coal Board had noted 3 years earlier a danger exists in Aberfan's tips, no remedial action had been taken, i.e., no berm was built or levelling done. The disaster was soon found to have been foreseen by more than a few. No one anywhere acted on the cautions their dreams provided. Psychiatrist John Barker of Shrewsbury visited Aberfan after the landslide. Barker had a long-standing interest in premonitions and wondered whether the extreme and tragic nature of events in Aberfan was preceded by premonitions. To find out, Barker arranged for a newspaper to ask readers who thought they had foreseen the Aberfan disaster to get in touch. He received 76 letters from England and Wales. Most respondents claimed their premonitions had come to them as a dream. Several were too vague or indefinite to be useful, and more than half had not recorded their dream prior to the tragedy. As a result, the total of relevant and useful dreams submitted was reduced to 24. How many dreams in Aberfan warned of this event? Research shows 100% of people would have, yet no records exist of that. Not many people realize the large, life-supporting value built into dreams. The most striking dream was submitted by parents of 10-year-old Errol May Jones. She perished in the tragedy. The day before the landslide, Errol described dreaming about trying to go to school, but said that there was no school there because something black had come down all over it. She started describing her dream to her mum by saying she wasn't afraid to die, not something a child would normally say. Yet no alarms or action ensued, due largely to so little understanding of the concepts built into dreams, or how to apply them. Barker wrote Premonitions of the Aberfan Disaster in Journal of the Society for Psychical Research, December 1967. He thought Errol's dreams best. In keeping with our observations, it is children's dreams which are best in recalling useful details in regards to foreseeing disasters. What they see via dreams is not limited to local events or necessarily seen in only a short time before. It might be years ahead of the event and any distance, with more locally. Also, preteen children are less burdened by what other people think is unlikely and simply report their dreams as they saw them. Their clarity in reporting what they experienced is noticeably higher than most adults convey. Another example, Mary Hennessy, 54, from Barnstaple, 100 miles southwest of Aberfan, said the night before the tragedy she dreamed of a group of children trapped in a rectangular room. In her dream, the end of the room was blocked by several wooden bars, and the children were trying to climb over the bars. Note the building framing at the rear looks like vertical bars in the picture. Carolyn Miller had a vision of the disaster on the evening of October 20th. She saw an old schoolhouse nestling in a valley, then a Welsh miner, then an avalanche of coal hurtling down a mountainside. At the bottom of the mountain was hurtling coal was a little boy with a long fringe, looking absolutely terrified to death. Then for a while I saw rescue operations taking place. I had an impression the little boy was left behind and saved. He looked so grief-stricken I could never forget him, and also with him was one of the rescue workers wearing an unusual peaked cap. One might also wonder if the unusual peak was the peak of the tips behind the community, or even the peak of the school roof. Another respondent, Mrs. G.E. from Sidcup, 200 miles east, said a week before the landslide she had dreamed about a group of screaming children being covered by an avalanche of coal. And 2 months before the tragedy, Mrs. S.B. from London, 185 miles east, had dreamed about a school on the hillside, an avalanche, and children losing their lives. The list went on. Still no one took any action. Not one of the premonitory dreams were definite enough for action to be taken in advance. Yet had the body of these dreams existed prior to the date the tragedy occurred, and had disbelief been overcome, at a minimum, an opportunity to take preemptive action would have been possible. To become useful, a more comprehensive and understanding approach is needed. The logic embodied in analogies, symbols, and concepts eludes many left-brained people, yet visionaries grasp them and put tangible realities to what they foresee via their dreams. You would know some of them for their recognition they attained by applying the content of their dreams to practical, constructive outcomes. Scientists, inventors, authors, movie scriptwriters, composers, and other creatives. Evidence of people who have foreseen tragedies is widespread, from Abraham Lincoln, who dreamt about an assassination 2 weeks before being shot dead, and Mark Twain, who described a dream in which he saw his brother's corpse lying in a coffin just a few weeks before he was killed in an explosion. Later, many people had dreams prior to the destruction of the World Trade Center, the 9/11 event, or as conveyed in a book, Futility of the Wreck of the Titan, describing the Titanic sinking 14 years before it happened. So what we know is that the time frame regarding these analogical warnings may have no defined period or date, if only one person's dreams are used. And yet the dreams continue up to the last moment. The analogical messages people get are very clear about the future event, however very few are literal. Skepticism, doubts, and disbelief have always existed. They produce few positive results, like inspired creativity. Only inaction, confusion, and other negatives based on loud, unfounded opinions, superficial rationalizing, half-truths, and/or schoolyard hearsay. It is unwise to accept addled opinions of an educated skeptic or opinionated disbeliever, negating a reality. If we did, the creative achievements of Einstein, Edison, Darwin, Tesla, Mozart, Grieg, Handel, Beethoven, numerous authors, movie scriptwriters, and Nobel Prize winners, plus the successes of every major scriptural prophet, could be negated by their ignorance and opinions. Dreams embody analogical concepts to be reasoned and acted on, not trickery to trip up the gullible. Conceptual thinkers, by recognizing the analogies in the useful messages, use them for any of the spectrum of tangible benefits dreams have been used for. They avoid being limited by conventional thinking or the latest crop of ignorant opinions. Another point to note is no specific limitation exists in regards to location of the dreamer. In one instance, a teen in Australia foresaw the eruption of a future volcano in England. She's in Northampton, yet a woman in North Yorkshire saw a volcano in England too. No active volcanoes in the UK exist and haven't in 100+ million years. So if this is a foreseen eruption, as it appears, they have seen it years in advance. Research by this writer shows 7 new volcanoes appear in the next 20 years. That's a huge increase over normal levels of 3 new ones in the last 70 years, of ones which have remained visible. While volcanoes are being mentioned, some might recall that John Donne was a soldier in South Africa in 1898 when he foresaw the 1902 eruption of Mount Pelée on Martinique and the thousands of lives lost. Well before it occurred, no action was taken, no lives were saved, and only 2 survivors, both with significant burns due to being touched by the red-hot pyroclastic flow. So one common theme emerges in these diverse examples, that dreams can provide advance warnings aimed towards protecting lives from being lost. Yet the bottom line is that we must learn to use those warnings responsibly and apply the words with reasoning to save lives from future tragic reality. Without cooperation, that's impossible. Noting what people foresaw after the tragedy, as Barker did, does not save lives. Humanity's abysmal record in using disaster dreams to preempt the loss of lives shows in Christchurch in 2011, Haiti in 2010, Indonesia in 2004, and New York's 9/11 event. Our non-profit's trial program is aimed at creating a broader, longer view of foreseen disasters, so the loss of lives in future tragedies is minimized or eliminated if possible. Multiple ways of participating exist, from encouraging children at home or at school to write their dreams, to providing financial incentives to them, paid by the word, to learning how to recognize what the analogies are conveying. We teach that. To correlating the content into a useful body of reasoned information, and funding the program via donations and purchases on buyorsell.it. Another benefit to participating children exists by greatly increasing levels of literacy. See firstspells.com. Moses likely had some of the same realizations of the future when he said, "Hear now my words. If there be a prophet amongst you, I, the Lord, will make myself known in visions, or will speak to him in dreams." From Numbers 12:6. The operating part of this statement is that everyone dreams, 4 to 7 a night. That source of our dreams has been known to provide useful messages in advance, with examples stretching back into antiquity. Note in Genesis 47, Joseph used his dreams to preempt a 7-year-long famine in Egypt, with a 7-year lead time to prepare for it. Does that long accepted truth suggest a probability that we can use dreams to preempt deaths prior to disasters? Yes. Seeing Joseph act on his dreams to produce a solution, we must apply a gram of prevention is worth a kilogram of cure approach for a slightly different scenario and end, yet one aimed at a preemptive solution. Many historic examples exist. If we sleep through the warnings dreams provide and or fail to record them, then we have nothing to work with. Think what a base of disaster dreams would have made it possible to do prior to any disaster. We can encourage children to recall and rate their dreams using incentives. Then a body of analogical content is created. That can be sifted for tragic future events, forewarning us of an event we may need to avoid, avert, or divert. It requires a tiny change of attitude and prompt institution of a plan of action, seeing saving lives as still humanity's primary concern, and more disasters are pending in places not normally mentioned in the news. If you have something constructive to add, we welcome it. Initial program objectives. Why? To create a database of disaster dreams to be correlated, understood, and used to preempt future disasters. How will they be correlated? By topic, location, and time on godofdreams.com. Who will understand them? People trained in the practicalities of dream usage, their structure, symbols, and inborn concepts, using practically dreaming. How can they be used to preempt disasters? By having sufficient numbers of dreams which relate to identifiable life-threatening events by type, location, and date, when possible, time of year, etc. What? Creating a database of dreams, ones showing disaster or life-threatening situations, beyond lone individuals, war, acts of tyranny, revolution, acts of terrorism and espionage, industrial accidents due to negligence, oversight, explosions, arson, etc., transportation crashes, collisions, or sinking, acts of God, earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanoes, landslides, subsidences, extreme winds or weather, floods, asteroids, comets, supernovas, meteoric showers, plagues of insects or diseases, famines, drought, wildfires, etc. Who? Principally to preteen children who can write in English, to start with, anywhere, later in other languages. How do children benefit? 1 cent a word, prizes, and increased levels of literacy and observational skills. The 1 cent per word is supported by donations of cash or goods to be sold on Buy or Sell It. It goes to their schools, not them personally, unless restrictions on who nonprofits can pay changes. Their biggest difficulty after recall is the lack of words to best describe what they see. A big visual dictionary will help solve that. How do you benefit? By knowing future disasters have been foreseen. Appropriate action can be taken to preempt the loss of life and property. Preemption may not initially work first time every time. However, some success is better than none, and if we don't try, we won't know how much we can do. Perfection may never be possible. Success will look like low or zero death tolls in disaster situations, primarily by preemptively evacuating people or alerting them to the dangers in advance. Each situation will be different. When? Daily, or as often as dreams can be recalled of the 4 to 7 we have per night as an average. Start recording now. Where? at home, our first choice, or school, then posted to the internet on godofdreams.com. It's almost operational. How? Into a computer, typed, or dictated to a participating family member, or into a speech-to-text program, following our 4-page lesson and recall guideline. We must try this approach in depth to satisfy our curiosity, if nothing else. Sufficient evidence already suggests the approach will work. If it does, there are huge benefits in terms of lives saved. Dreams are solvable puzzles based on words describing images, provided 24/7 by the cosmic consciousness for free. They await reasoning. Aren't you tired of seeing the carnage of disasters, heart-wrenching scenes, and frantic, usually futile searching for survivors? And later references to people who foresaw the event and the information was never used. Isn't it time we took a constructive and proactive approach to foresight, even if it is not the 2020 vision we'd like, instead of lamenting the losses? Our inability to properly study the ability and relevant content of disaster dreams costs lives. Inaction, doubts, and disbelief propagate deaths, yet can be met with something positive and life-supporting rather than nothing. We may not stop property losses and disasters, yet we are certain with a trial or two we can warn people in advance so they can take responsibility for necessary actions. So believers in this communication process can save lives. The cost of doing this isn't free, however it is expected to be far less than the losses incurred with losing even one life. Do you know when the next disaster will be, or how many lives could be at risk? Will you contribute to this innovative way of saving lives? Now. We are about to supply a different way of raising funds for this. You can bet for or against the occurrence of the next foreseen disaster in which lives are at risk onto bet.me raffles, on the time it will occur and whether lives will be lost. If the date is supplied for, say, a new volcano, can you pick the right thousandth of a second it will erupt? 7 new volcanoes in the next 20 years are just a few of the known events in the years ahead, along with all the effects they create on weather, transportation, crops, and of course, lives in the immediate area. Who we are. Sea Prize Foundation, Inc. is a Canadian non-profit incorporated in Saskatchewan, March 25, 2008. Our literacy, social and health programs and technology challenge were developed around the book series and Practically Dreaming course written and created by Alan Harmony. Our office can be reached at 306-473-2665 or by email to manager@cprize.org. Or listen to our developmental radio station, Sea Jazz, at 99.7 FM. And to our flagship program, Epiphanies, online at cjzz.org or cjzz.org to you that don't pronounce the alphabet the same way. This document can be found at cprize.org/Aberfan, ABERFAN.pdf or aberfan.ppt or aberfan.doc. If you translate this for publication, please email us a copy. It is copyrighted and free for non-commercial use, and 1 cent per reader or listener in commercial venues. Remit payment to Box 10, Willow Bunch, SK S0H4K0.